Welcome back to Beyond Menopause Belly, your midlife reimagined. So, when I think about health and life and projects and everything you can think of, my brain is wired to think of them in Chinese medicine perspectives. Specifically, I often think about the five elements. And why do I think about the five elements? Because five elements is a holistic, dynamic system that incorporates your body and nature, and it follows seasons, and it's whole. Okay, I'm gonna break this down for you, but just understand that you are whole, right? And you are not a symptom. You are not a profession. We talked about this the other day in one of my recent videos, that we identify as just one part of us, or we focus on just one part of us, but we are a whole dynamic being, and the five elements represent this. So when we think about that, and I can break it down into these five elements, I hope it gives you a little bit more perspective on the five elements and how to start viewing midlife. So the five elements may be understood as five phases or movements of energy that closely relate to the phases of yin and yang's transformational energies. Now, I'll do a separate training on yin and yang and how you can utilize that framework as well. Yin and yang is not just some like hippy dippy peace symbol. It's actually a diagnostic tool, as is the five elements for Chinese medicine practitioners. So why should you care about the five elements and how it relates to you as a woman in the prime midlife of your life? Because it's time we take into consideration you as a whole being, all of you, every single aspect of your life, all of the years of life that you've lived, the healing, the falls, the getting back up, the challenges, the triumphs, every part of you, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, all of the things. You are so much more than you can even think of, right? So, and I mentioned all of that in my previous video. We must consider our purpose, relationships, again, laughter, hobbies, travel, just all the things that make us who we are. And the five elements is the dynamic whole system that we can look at and in any of these areas of our lives. So the five element theory is a system developed to understand the cycle and flow of life. It describes the cyclical phases of nature and the human body. So there's an author who's a medical doctor. His name is Charles A. Moss, and he wrote the book called The Power of the Five Elements. And what he said is that when he teaches five element acupuncture to physicians, he emphasizes, this is a great point, he emphasizes on the points that sets the system apart, that it treats the whole person. It's the person who has the disease, not just the symptoms of the disease. So think about that. You are not your limitations. You are not your symptoms. You are this whole being. So it's an important thing to remember about the five elements is that although each element is unique in its characteristics and functions, they also function as a dynamic whole. Therefore, when one element becomes out of balance, so to speak, it's not long that the entire system is disrupted and affected. So from its beginnings, the five element cycle connected various aspects of experience to its individual elements. So what do I mean by that? Seasons, body organs, emotions, sounds, colors, directions, phases, and climates were all distributed and distinguished over this cycle. So I'm going to show you an image where you can see that there is what we call a generating cycle. the generating cycle or creating cycle of the five elements, as well as the controlling cycle of the five elements. This is how this cycle occurs in nature. Think of it this way, because one element is generating the other. And that's why I'm saying, like, if one area breaks down, the whole system breaks down, right? So the cycle is infinite and gives rise to change and transformation. It's fluid, like the yin and yang, the waxing and the waning. And the generating or creating cycle is what we call the mother child, meaning the mother creates the child, right? So it's the mother child system. All right, let's start with wood. So wood easily burns. So it's wood, fire. Let me tell you what those elements are. Wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. Now, the wood is what we often begin with, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in a minute. So wood easily burns and makes a fire, right? And fire produces ash, which creates the earth. The earth contains mineral from which metal is formed. And then when metal is heated and cooled, water droplets, condensation, form, creating water. Thus, metal creates water. So water promotes the growth of trees, which are wood. And as you can see, the cycle then continues. So let me break down each of the elements from a kind of a broad perspective and how we look at it. And after this video, I'm going to break down each element and really help you understand how each element relates to different areas of your life and how you can first see it and what you can do about it. Okay, so wood is associated or in our organ systems with the liver and gallbladder, but also with movement, flexibility, vision. And by the way, it's not just our physical vision, it's also our intuitive vision, what we are envisioning for our life. Coordination, planning, hope, and creativity. I mean, if you think about the nature of wood, it comes from a tree. Like the tree is what represents the wood, and it's grounded, it's solid, but it's also flexible, right? So you don't want to become too rigid and too flexible. So we're always seeking balance in every single one of these elements. So the fire is connected with the heart and pericardium. It has a capacity. I love talking about the fire. I like talking about all of them for different reasons, but it's fun. This is a fun one because the fire represents the capacity to love, feel joy, make connections with others, right? This is connections and relationships are formed, things that you feel passionate about, inspired good relationship, inspired good feelings, inspired good activity, action. It's the summer. It's when things are in full bloom and things are just expanding. Whereas like the wood element, by the way, is spring, which is really cool because it's about birthing something new, right? It's like when things are just starting to come into view and our vision. And then the fire elements, like when things are just bursting, like all that planning and goal setting that you do in that wood element phase is blowing up and coming to fruition in the fire element phase. So then the earth relates to what we call the spleen and stomach. And it's really about our digestive system, but like also think about things like what are you digesting on a daily basis? What are you taking in? What are you churning? What are you thinking about? It's about transformation, but it's also about being centered and grounded and thought. So when you're in thought, there's a balanced state of thought, but there's also the unbalanced state is when you are in worry and you have a thought that you just can't get out of your mind, and it just causes so much stress and digestive upset And just like so much time, how much time do we spend worrying? But it's also about empathy and nurturing those relationships and connections that you made in that fire element phase. So it's really about nurturing relationships, connections, and yourself, whether it's physically with good nutrition or who you surround yourself with, or just doing really good things for your body and your life. Now, the metal element is connected to our lungs and large intestine, and it's related to making space, letting go of the things that no longer serve you. So think about the lungs here. It's inspiration. You're taking it in and you're taking then all the inspiration in and you're exhaling that which is no longer necessary. This is your breath. It's your endurance. It's when you let go of things that no longer serve you, you start becoming more self-confident, and your self-esteem, your self-worth, and your values start to really grow. So this is a really important phase, this metal element. I used to think metal element, that's like, doesn't sound like a fun element. It's actually a magical element because it's your value, your self-worth, your self-esteem. I love this analogy where Michelangelo was creating the David, and he said, the David, just like your self-worth and your perfection is already there. He said that David was already there. His only job was to remove that which is not necessary to kind of bring that David to life. So I want you to think about what you can let go of to really be able to shine your value, your gem, your light, your gifts, your all those things. And then finally, the water element. It's related to our kidney and bladder. It is also where we store our essence. And we'll talk more about that at another time. But it's also about our willpower, our courage, our capacity, our strength, our actualization. It's where all creativity springs. So in the winter, this is our winter. By the way, metal element is autumn. So again, it's think about, I want to go back to that for a second. Think about like autumn, the season is what's happening in nature. It's like letting go, right? The leaves are falling away, those things that are not necessary anymore. And nature is perfect. So we we are perfect, as above, so below. So this nature just represents what's happening in our own body. So, and it's also the time that we're reaping our harvest, right? All the connections that we created and nurtured, now it's like, what are we reaping? We're reaping the harvest in the metal element, again, receiving the value that we created. And then the winter time, which is the water element, this is when we start going inward, right? Creativity, when I say creativity springs from this season, this element, it's because we're going inward. We're germinating, we're cultivating what we want to bring and birth in the springtime. So I hope this kind of starts, getting your wheels turning. Let me just say one more thing about the water element. The water element, so every element has an emotion that's also attached to it. And water element is fear, right? So fear, can be something that holds us back. And there's also a healthy fear that keeps us from doing really stupid things, or dangerous things, or things that keep us unsafe. But often it's a fear of the unknown, right? You're going into this inward stage and you don't know what's next. You don't know what's going to be birthed. And so people get stuck in this phase. And so I want you to just let it go and know that you can transform this fear into something really powerful. So I hope, again, I can't wait to get into the individuality of each one of these elements to really kind of bring it home for you and help you start creating some action plans, some plans or thoughts or ideas for each element and how they work together in your life. All right, we will see you in the next video of the wood element. Take care.